With only 2 years left until its grand debut, there's a ton of excitement around Universal's new park, Epic Universe. Despite that wait, we have a solid idea of what to expect. Based on rumors, patents, and other information, it looks like this park will open with 11 different attractions. So, in this video, I want to go through each of those rides, and place them on a tier list from F to S. Of course, take all this with a grain of salt, considering this list is purely predictions based on the latest rumors. With all that out of the way, let's get into it. Starting off in the hub of the park, let's talk about the attraction we seem to know the least about. Right in the center of the park, it looks like there will be some sort of basic flat ride, potentially a carousel. Based on that alone, this would probably have to go in the D tier for me. The stained glass building surrounding the ride should elevate it a bit, but otherwise I'm not sure it has a lot going for it. It should be fun, but certainly one of the weaker rides in the resort. The other ride in the hub, however, should be one of the strongest. This MACK Rides dueling launch coaster will probably be the most thrilling ride in the entire park. Featuring several launches, inversions, and other intense moments, this should certainly be an adrenaline-pumping endeavor. The one downside I could see though is the theming. While the interior moments on the ride should have great theming, I'm not sure what they'll do with the exterior. This is a space-themed ride, so launching out onto a planet that looks extremely similar to our own isn't the most interesting thing out there. Not to mention, unlike Hulk and Velocicoaster, this likely won't have any interactions with guest areas, which is a bit of a bummer. Regardless, the interactions between the two trains should really elevate the experience, along with the potential for this to have a similar lighting package to what's found on Slinky Dog Dash. So, while I'll be placing this one in the A tier for now, just know it could easily become an S upon opening. That said, let's move on to the first proper land of the park, Super Nintendo World. Considering a version of this land has already opened at Universal Studios Japan, these rides should be a bit easier to rank. First on the list is Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge. Because this ride relies so much on its augmented reality feature, it's a bit difficult to rate without having been on it myself. However, taking into account the physical theming and overall speed of the ride, it doesn't seem to be anything huge for the park. The interactivity should help, adding a good amount of re-rideability to it, but as it stands, I think this ride will land in the B tier. At the opposite end of Super Nintendo World sits yet another slow-moving dark ride. Yoshi's Adventure is most similar to the high-in-the-sky Seuss Trolley train ride found at Island of Adventure. Taking guests on an elevated tour of the land, this ride should offer some nice views. Unfortunately, unlike the Seuss Trolley train ride, this attraction is incredibly short. It does have some charming theming and interior set pieces, but it ends really abruptly and without much fanfare. Despite all it has going for it, I think Yoshi's Adventure will have to drop in the C tier on this list. If it were a bit longer, it could be a good time, but as it stands, it's just a bit too short to justify its existence. On the bright side though, there's one last ride to talk about before we leave Super Nintendo World. As a huge fan of Donkey Kong, there's not many rides I'm more excited to go on than the Donkey Kong Minecart roller coaster. The theming looks fantastic, taking the aesthetic of Donkey Kong Country Returns and really bringing it to life. Not to mention, the track hopping gimmick of this ride is a really fun idea. From off-ride, it'll look like the minecart is hopping over gaps in the track, which should be pretty cool. The one thing holding this back from an S tier is the thrill level. Understandably, this will likely be a coaster aimed at young kids, which means for a rider like myself, it won't be quite as fun to hop on. Again, it makes sense considering Nintendo's core audience, but it does put this ride down into a very solid A tier. Should be a fun time, but won't quite have the thrills I'm looking for. At this point, you might be wondering what ride will actually make it into the S tier. Well, the first attraction I want to give that honor is in the Universal Monsters area of the park. Rumored to be called Monsters Unchained, this high-tech dark ride will be using the same ride system as Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, but with a few tweaks. The ride vehicle will offer higher viewability, which will accentuate the mostly practical theming found throughout the attraction. That means it should also get rid of the simulated portions found in Forbidden Journey, which is a huge perk in my opinion. Another rumor is that the ride vehicle could be situated on roller coaster track, allowing for tremendous possibilities with the layout. Pair that with the potential for some nice horror theming, and this ride is an easy S tier for me. Likely my most anticipated ride in the entire park. As for the other ride in the Universal Monsters Land, my thoughts are a little more complicated. While original plan suggested this would be a stage show of sorts, it now appears this ride will be a werewolf-themed spinning roller coaster. There were rumors it would be an extreme spinning coaster, like Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City, but it now seems likely that this will be a family spinning coaster. While it still looks pretty fun, I don't think this ride will go any higher than B tier for me. Like the Donkey Kong roller coaster, I don't expect the thrill level to really impress me in any way. The landscaping and theming should help out a bit, but as this is a last minute addition, I'll admit I'm a little unsure about it. Hopefully it should have some fun interactions with the guest areas of the land. Otherwise, this should be a good but not quite great ride. Moving on to the third land of the park, let's talk about the brand new Harry Potter Dark Ride. Using the same ride vehicle as the Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, I'd expect this to be a dynamic and off-the-wall attraction. It'll make tweaks to the overall ride system, and use groundbreaking effects from later iterations of the ride. Most notably, this may even use the same effect seen on Jurassic World Adventure, with a giant creature chasing right behind you. All that paired with the huge budget usually allocated to Harry Potter attractions, and this ride will easily be joining Monsters Unchained in the S tier. Definitely one of the most exciting rides Universal has ever worked on. Finally, let's talk about the 3 rides coming to the How to Train Your Dragon area. 2 of these are relatively simple flat rides. The first is a competitive boat ride where you and other guests will try and get people on the other boat soaked. Personally, I don't really see the appeal in this. It may be kind of fun, but other than being the only water ride in the park, it doesn't seem to have a whole lot going for it. Maybe the theming will be cool, but overall I think this will have to go in the D tier. The other flat ride in this land is a Gerstlauer Skyfly attraction. While it may appear to be a little basic upon first glance, this ride has a gimmick that I think will really appeal to most guests. Rather than having a set amount of spins, guests can choose how much or how little they flip on the ride. That means this ride can be as intense or as basic as you'd like, which is a really cool idea. The theming will likely be a bit lackluster, but with the landscaping and roller coasters surrounding the attraction, I think I'll have to push it into the C tier. Last but not least, let's talk about that roller coaster I mentioned. This will be an Intamin family launch coaster, along the same lines as Hagrid's at Island of Adventure. While the layout will remove some of the more unique elements found on that ride, it should still be extremely fun. The landscaping surrounding this attraction looks to be excellent, and I love the various interactions with the water. Throw in a couple dragon animatronics, and this has the potential to be a really solid family thrill ride. While it's not quite in the S tier, it certainly earns its spot as a very solid A tier. Here's the final tier list overall. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my tier list of every ride at Universal Studios, and stay tuned for the upcoming Island of Adventure ride tier list. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you all next time.